meditates on me, thinking of none else, by him who is a yogin ever disciplined or united with the Supreme, I am easily reached. Shri Krishna tells Arjun that the person who constantly and every day meditates on him and has his thoughts fixed on him, thinking of none else, by him who is a yogin ever disciplined or united with the Supreme, for him Shri Krishna is very easy to reach. The word sulabha is used, meaning easily available. Let us think about each and every word of this verse. The first word that is used is ananya cheta. The majority of human beings are anya cheta rather than ananya cheta. These two words are worth understanding, anya cheta and ananya cheta. Anya cheta means someone in whom the feeling of anya, being different, has come. This is the feeling that I am different from the other person, I am different from this world, I am different from these objects, or God is different from me. This feeling is a feeling of anya cheta, having the feeling of being different from others. This is such that nobody has relations with anyone else in this world, and everybody is different. This is anya cheta, having the feeling of being different from others. The vision of differences is a reason for the sorrow of human beings that are anya cheta, who have the feelings of being different from others. This is because as soon as the other comes, then sorrows will begin. Not only that, but another meaning of anya cheta is having expectations from others or asking from others. This is also anya cheta. This is when one needs another person. When one cannot go without the other person, then this is anya cheta. In spirituality or in true dharma, if there is our biggest enemy of all, then this is frustration. And what does frustration come from? If there is any substance that makes us adharmic, this is frustration. If there is only one thing, then one gets frustration from it. This is the habit of the mind. It keeps asking for new things. It constantly wants something else. This is the demand of the mind. If there is a small child, then it wishes to have a new doll, a new toy, a new game, or new clothes. Then these new clothes keep changing throughout his life. Then it wants new relationships. It keeps asking for something new over and over again. He stays with another person and gets frustrated with that person, so asks for a new person. This happens constantly. In India today, there is a legacy of the rishis, and that is why culture has lasted and people spend their entire married life with one life partner. But if you go abroad to the West and see Western culture, then when people celebrate the silver wedding anniversary, their 25th wedding anniversary, have produced invitations and take them to the offices, showing them to the other people working there that this is our 25th wedding anniversary and we're holding a party so you should come, then these people ask, what do you mean 25 years with the same spouse? These people ask the same question, and they ask after that, do you not get bored for 25 years? Then people reply that we have only been married for 25 years, but our parents in India have been married for 50 or 60 years. These people say, 60 years? Do they not marry again? There's no need for this. These people find it strange. We find it funny to hear about their strange way of life and how they find it strange when they see our 25th wedding anniversary card. This is because social research that has taken place there has come to the conclusion that the average American or average Westerner living in the West or colored with the culture of the West changes their life partner approximately every 5 years, changes their house approximately every 7 years, and changes their job at the maximum after 10 years. They cannot stay in the same circumstances, and they've averaged everyone and have said that at an average their whole life changes completely every 7 years. We saw earlier in this chapter that scientists have said that the whole body changes completely every 7 years. As well as this, on average, the life of a person living in the West changes completely every 7 years. His or her job changes, his or her house changes, and his or her life partner changes. If we meet someone in India, then we ask them what their husband does or how many children they had. In the West, if someone says that they live with a husband, then they'll automatically ask, what number husband is this? And it is a very natural question in the West. Again, I say that we may find this funny, but it is a very natural question in the West that what number husband is this? If the person says it is a third husband or a fourth husband, then they ask them whether they get alimony from the previous husbands for the maintenance. This is the regular routine talk of these people, and while eating sandwiches at lunchtime in the offices, they say that the second husband is giving the alimony, but the third husband is not going to give it, and therefore this is happening with him. If someone asks them how many children they have, then they may say they have 4 children. Then one asks, how many of those children are theirs? There's a lot of mine, yours, and ours in the West. let us leave that to the side. What I mean to say is that the mind asks for new things again and again, and this results in frustration. Have people become more happy after getting married 4 or 5 times? No. The amount of happiness there is in one marriage, or I should say the amount of sadness there is in one marriage, these people have to get the same amount of sadness in 4 or 5 marriages. The amount of happiness and sadness is going to remain the same. This does not change. Then it is the nature of the mind that it keeps asking for something new, and because this mind asks for something new, this results in frustration. When a person thinks that he is on something else, then this is ananyacheta, the feeling of being different. Shri Krishna says that a person should be ananyacheta, not having any expectations from others. The reason for this is that the person knows that I, myself, am complete. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnam, Punat Purnam Dijatete, Purnasya Purnamitya, Purnameva Vashishyate. That is whole, but you are not incomplete either, because you belong to the whole. From the whole, when the whole was taken out, what remains again is a whole with a capital H. The characteristics of a person who is ananyacheta is that one does not have expectations from others, and one does not have any complaints from others. And why does one have no complaints towards others? There are also reasons for this. The first reason of all is that the other person does not feel different. Such a person thinks that there is no other person. All that is there is me. My God is inside everyone. Where is the other person? If you look at it from an external perspective, then everybody seems different. But if we look at it from an internal perspective, then this reminds me of an example that I like very much. If there is a tree that has endless amounts of leaves and branches, then if one leaf looks from an external perspective, then the other leaf will feel different from it. This is natural. If it looks from an external perspective, then the other leaf will seem different from it. It will feel separated from it. It will feel that I'm just blooming now, whereas the other one is about to wilt. This is what it feels. It feels that the yellow leaf has fallen and is wilting. I'm still on a branch, whereas the other leaf has fallen to the ground. That's exactly how it feels. How long does it feel like this for? It feels like this while it's looking from an external perspective. But if this leaf gets an internal perspective and begins looking from inside, then it understands that no, this other leaf that looks different from me is not different. Both this leaf and me are on the same branch. Our branch is one. One branch may find another branch to be different, but if that branch goes inside it and looks from within, then all the branches will feel that all of us branches are steady on one trunk. One tree may find another tree to be different, but if that tree goes inside it and looks, then it will know that all our roots are inside this earth. The earth may consider other planets to be different and separate and have the feeling of extraterrestrial, but if that planet looks inside it, then realize that all the planets are orbiting around one sun. The gravity of the sun is holding all of them, and they have all become manifest from this. One sun may see another sun. This is because scientists and astrologers say that there are millions of suns in the entire universe. From an external perspective, and they feel that the other suns are different, but if one goes inside and looks, then they'll realize that we are all in one galaxy of the universe. Our galaxy may find another galaxy to be different, but if it looks from within, then in the end, Akhil Brahman Ma Ek Tu Shri Hari Jujve Rupe Anant Bhase. There is nothing but Brahman everywhere, and everything is a form of Brahman. Nobody is different from you. There is no other person. And if there is no other person, then the person automatically becomes ananyacheta, thinking of none else. This person does not feel others to be different. Ananya does not mean no anya differences. It does not mean that there is a non-acceptance of others or that there are no others. Rather than that, it means that one does not feel others to be different. This is what ananya means. It means that nobody feels different. It means that nobody feels separate. This is true ananya. This is the vision of everything in one. Ananyacheta, thinking of none else, can happen in 2 ways. Until now, the discussion of the Nirgun Nirakar, the formless God without qualities, was taking place. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anoraninam Anusmaradye Sarvasya Daratam Achintra Rupam Adyafaranam Tamasa Parastat. Shri Krishna said in the Gita, he who meditates on the seer, the ancient, the ruler, subtler than the subtle, the supporter of all, whose form is beyond conception, whose sun coloured beyond the darkness. If we look at it from this perspective, then one can become Ananyacheta if Hari Vyapak Sarvatra Samana, Hari, God, pervades everywhere equally. Such a God resides in and pervades in each and every atom. This is because nothing can last without the substance of God. And if we look at it from the perspective of the Sagun Sakar, the God with a form and qualities, then the thought that one has is Prem te pragata ohin me jana. God has manifest with love. This is one Ishdev, the personal God. If we look at it from the perspective of the Sagun Sakar, the God with the form and qualities, then Ananyacheta, thinking of none else, means seeing the form of the one Ishdev, personal God, in all forms with equal love and adoration. One should see the form of one's Ishtadev, personal God, with love and adoration in all forms. And by forms, I do not mean the idols made out of stone and clay, but in each and every human being. If I am a worshipper of Bal Krishna, the childhood form of Shri Krishna, then I should see the form of Bal Krishna in all forms, in all human beings, and in the entire world. Only then am I an Ananyacheta devotee. If I am a worshipper of Sri Ramchandraji, then I should see the form of Sri Ramchandraji in all forms, in all human beings, and in the entire world. Therefore, I should not oppose other idols, and it should not be that I do not even look at other idols. I should not do that. But I should have as much adoration and as much love in other idols as they do in the idol of Sri Ramchandraji, who is my Ishtadev, personal God. This is true Ananyacheta, thinking of none else. Srimad Adi Shankaracharya Ji has given a definition of Ananyacheta as Na Anya Vishyate Chetaha Yasya Saha Ananyacheta, meaning one whose thoughts are only on one thing and not in other things. If a person performs activities with only one thought in their mind, then different activities may be taking place, but only one thing is going on in his mind. If a person has learnt to drive, and the person has one thought in his mind while driving, for example, what has my spouse made for dinner at home, he reaches a long distance driving like this. He drives for 30 minutes or for 45 minutes just thinking about what she or he must have made and not thinking about driving, yet has he reached there or not? He has reached. A person who is Ananyacheta, thinking of none else, pursues the past in his life while constantly thinking about the Supreme Soul. This is Ananyacheta, thinking of none else. There is one root principle that the more one's remembrance of the Lord increases, then more one's proximity with the Lord increases. The path to reach the Supreme Soul and the steps to development to reach the Supreme Soul are made of remembrance. It says in this verse that Yo Mam Smarati Nityasha, he who constantly meditates on me. A person who is Ananyacheta can meditate Nitya, meaning eternally, and Satatam, meaning constantly. The mind of a person who is Ananyacheta, thinking of others as different, Anyacheta, thinking of others as different, always runs around, and such a person can never meditate Nitya, eternally, and Satatam, constantly. Therefore, a person who is Ananyacheta, thinking of none else, can meditate eternally and constantly on the Supreme Soul. What does Satat mean? It means Satatam iti nairadtaram uchyate. It means to eternally do something. Thinkers say Satat Smaran, constantly remembering, means to remember God right from the point when the eyes open and awakeness begins to when one is in deep sleep at night time. One begins the moment when one's eyes open and until one goes into deep sleep. If I were to say further, then if one remembers God and goes into deep sleep, then this means that because one has remembered God during his awake state, then God will also be remembered during a sleeping state, and God will be remembered for 24 hours a day. It happens during every moment. Even his sleep becomes samadhi, oneness with God. Atma tam girija mati sarachara prana shariram gruham pujate vishyoga paraboka tarachana nidra samadashti sanchara padayog pradashini vidhi sotani sotavidaro yadya karma karomitata takilam shambho tava radhanam. This is Srimad Adi Shankaracharya, which means, God, everything I do is in adoration of you. Because you are my soul, my intellect is Parvati, the 5 parts of my breath, which are Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udanaya and Samana, are the 5 faces of Shiva. my body is your temple, my enjoyment of material objects is my worship of you, because you have blessed me with these things due to my good deeds, and I have not forgotten you while enjoying them. Therefore my enjoyment of these things brings me closer to you. When I go to sleep, then I attain the divine state, because I remember you before going to sleep, and when waking up, therefore the time I spent sleeping must have been in remembrance or in the divine state. Whenever I step, I am doing a pilgrimage, because you are omnipresent, you are everywhere, and I know that you reside in all the places where I step. Therefore each step of mine brings me closer to you. Everything I say is in praise of you, because I say it for you. This is because everything I say brings people closer to you. I give your thoughts to everyone, and remembering this one thing, I make everyone's lives pure. Therefore everything that I say is in praise of you. Whatever works I perform is in adoration of you and a worship of you. This is what Srimad Adi Shankaracharya says. This is Satat Smaran, constant remembering. Nityasa means every day and forever. The day on which one resolves to remember God, when one remembers God beginning from that day until death, then this is Nitya Sha. When one cannot stop something after beginning it, then this is Nitya Sha. Shankaracharya makes it clear that long time does not mean 6 months or a year, but for as long as one lives and for as long as there is air being breathed in one's body. Nitya Sha itri dirgha kavyam uchyate. This is Nitya Sha. And for such a person, Shri Krishna says that if we were to understand it in simple language, because this person has time for me, that is why I have time for him. And that this yogi has given all his time for me, and this true devotee has given all his time for me, therefore I have a lot of time for him. If we go to someone because we need them, and the other person says that I do not have much time, so wait for half an hour, 45 minutes, then go inside for 2 minutes and say what you want. Oh brother, we're coming to say the feelings in our heart, and you're asking us to go for 2 minutes? How can this work? The person says that he does not have time. Then when he needs, he comes to us. This is how it works in professional relations. When a chartered accountant goes to a doctor when he's ill, and a doctor does not look at him, then when a doctor has a need for a CA, then the CA does not look after him, saying that when I needed, then you did not help me, so I will see today. But if this chartered accountant reaches a doctor, and the doctor puts his patients aside, and he says to him, it tells him to come inside, and the same doctor goes to the same CA, then the CA will say, I will put all my other files to the side and will look at your file first. No matter if I have to go to the income tax office twice, I will finish your case. This happens. This is because if the other person has time for you, then it becomes your duty that you should have time for them. In the same way, God says that one who constantly remembers me, I am easily reached. And because we do not have time for God, God says to us that he does not have time for us. Our mind keeps running around in the material world, and we attain what our minds run after. Our minds are in the material world, and we have time for the material world, so the material world is easily reached by us. But where does our mind fall, and how does God become easily reached? It is when one has the attitude that only God is mine. This body, senses, mind, intellect, and life breath are not mine. When one gets this firm understanding, then the Lord becomes easily reached. I'll tell you something else. The feeling of difference between us and the Lord, and a feeling of oneness with the material world was never there, is not there now, and will never be there. Then when we feel that God must be somewhere far, that God is somewhere different, is someone different, and that we are one with the material world, then this feeling is an illusion, and this is Maya. The oneness between God and human beings is not just natural, but is our right, it is our birthright. And the natural difference between human beings and the material world is a principle, and it is there. But because of the wrong belief and illusory belief that oneself is one with the body, the material world, the mind and the intellect, and that this body is mine, this mind is mine, and this intellect is mine, the human being becomes stuck in the circle of birth and death. Shri Krishna takes the subject of rebirth later in this chapter. What is the reason for the circle of life and death? Anyone know? What's the reason for the circle of life and death? It is because one has fallen away from that which is Satya, eternal. One has forgotten their oneness with the Supreme Soul, and because a curtain has fallen upon it, and therefore the material world has come. Then everything comes within the category of the material world, yet the body, the mind, the intellect, the senses, the life breath, relations, objects, instruments, and faults, all of these come into the category of the material world. When we have a unification and identification with this, then because of this, the human being remains in the circle of life and death. And the moment when this wrong belief breaks, then one can understand in reality that one's feeling of being one with the material world is wrong, while one's feeling of being one with God is right. Then God immediately becomes easily reached. One realizes that he is God's. Third, thinkers discuss the meaning of the word sullabh, easily reached, in the context of the 8th to the 13th verses of the 8th chapter, where it's shown what one should do during one's last moments and what efforts one should make from liberation through pranayam, breathing techniques, and other means. One begins controlling the senses, and slowly he makes his pran, his life breath, rise upwards and takes it to Brahmarand, the plane of Brahman, where it departs, and he chants the Omkar, Bhruvor Madhya Pranam Avashya Samyak, setting well his life force in the center of the eyebrows. All of this is explained, and all of this is possible through practice. This is the way of efforts. One needs to make efforts for this. One should make these efforts throughout one's life. If one has not made efforts throughout his whole life, and death comes and stands in front of him, and one begins following this way shown in the 8th chapter of the Gita, in setting well his life force in the center of the eyebrows, yet he does not even know what the life force is, then he would not be able to do it. Rather than that, one needs to make efforts throughout the whole life, and one needs to practice this throughout the whole lives. It is difficult and filled with obstacles. We feel as if all of this is difficult. Therefore, a devotee asks that God, is there no other way? Is it that difficult, and can you never become sullabh, easily reached? Lord, am I not able to do all of this? There is a bhajan, divine song, that Anta samay jare avshe tyare nei re dehu nabhan. When one's last moments will come, then one will have no consciousness of the body. The devotee says that God, during my last moment, it may so happen that I have no consciousness of the body. What then should I do? If I have no consciousness of the body, then how will I be able to do pranayam, breathing techniques, and all of this? How can I make it steady? How can I make the doors of the senses closed? I do not even know when my last moments will come. What then should I do? For this, God says that the easy path is to have the feeling that the relationship of no difference between God and a devotee has been there since time immemorial. In this relationship, none of the body, the mind, the intellect, the senses, and the life breath are necessary. That is why during one's last moments, one does not have a worry about setting well the life force at the center of his eyebrows, and one does not have a fear of any type of downward movement. We can say as an example that if a person has taken out car insurance and the insurance company is good, where we paid all the premiums properly, the company is authentic, or the officers are good, then do we have any worries about the accident happening? If a car accident happens, then fine, it has happened, and what can we do? We can tell the insurance company that these are the expenses, and they will immediately give them to us saying that this is yours. There are no worries in relation to this. One makes efforts so that no accident happens, but it has happened. Therefore, one has no worries. The reason for this is that the insurance company is good, the officers are authentic, and you have paid all your premiums. In the same way, for one who has surrendered everything to the Supreme Soul, such a person has no worries if this death comes to this car in the form of the body. The reason for this is that the company is good, he has paid his premiums every day by performing worship every day, coming to Gita classes, performing penances every day, and he has maintained this relationship constantly. And what more of an authentic company can you find than God? If it is an officer of a company here, then he may say that you have paid a £15,000 bill, but we will only give you £12,000. Even if he gives £12,000, then this is good. But the company is good, it is authentic, and you have paid the premiums, so what worry is there that you will not get paid? In the same way, the devotee has this freedom from worries. You do not have to finish this car in the form of the body. You do not want to throw it away. This is because Sharira Madhyam Kalu Dharma Sadhana, the body is a vehicle to perform the works of Dharma. All the works and penances of Dharma are to be done with the body. You do not want to throw this body away, but it is the nature of the body. If there is a car and it's driving on the road, then there will be 50 other cars moving around, and sometimes this can happen. We may be driving well, but someone else may come in the car and hit our car. In the same way, I may look after my body, but time passes and something can happen. What if that happens? The devotee does not have any worries of this. The reason for this is that the devotee knows that the relationship between the Supreme Soul and me is eternal. Such feelings arise after one surrenders everything to the Supreme Soul. For this, Shri Krishna says that the worshipping, the penances, and the works are there, and there's no denying this. But if one wishes to have one path, then the person who constantly remembers God, then God is easily reached by them. For one who constantly meditates on God, thinking of none else, by him who is a yogi ever disciplined or united with the Supreme, God is easily reached. There is remembering of God at the beginning, and at the end there is surrendering to God. This is because surrendering comes after remembering. If someone constantly stays in our mind, and we are constantly remembering them, then we have the attitude of surrendering to them. Both remembering and surrendering are not born of work, are not born of efforts, and that is why there is no difficulty in them. All they entail is an awareness about a true relationship that God and I are one. They are born from experience, and that is why God is easily reached through these means. Shri Krishna says in this verse that a yogin should be nitya yuktasya, ever disciplined or united with the Supreme. When one has the feeling of ananya, then one does not see anyone as different. So if he is united with anyone, then he will be united with the Supreme Soul. This is because he is ananya cheta, thinking of none else, and therefore he sees the Supreme Soul everywhere. Therefore, no matter what he may be doing, he'll be united with the Supreme Soul. Srimad Adi Shankaracharya Ji defines nitya yuktasya as nitya yuktasya sada samahit chittasya yogina hata ananya chetaha vaisada samahita hata bhuvet, meaning perpetual communion with God. This is when one is forever united with God. The Supreme Soul is giving the instructions through this verse that a person who is ananyacheta, thinking of none else, should constantly fix their thoughts of God. That is why God is sulabha, easily reached. The devotee says that God, fine, you are sulabha, easily reached, but what is the fruit when you are sulabha, easily reached? What are the consequences of this? The Lord shows us in the next verse what the consequences are when God becomes sulabha, easily reached. Verse 15.